Welcome back to the deep dive. I want to start today with something you are doing right this very second.
Oh,
Well, okay, technically you're listening, but think about what you do for a huge chunk of your waking life. You're looking at a page or a screen, and you see these tiny little squiggles.
lines, curves, dots, and almost instantly, a movie starts playing in your head.
Exactly. It feels like magic. It feels incredibly simple. You don't even think about it as like doing anything. You read.
It is the ultimate illusion of ease. Because if you actually, pop the hood on the human brain while it's reading, it is anything but simple.
Not at all.
It's this chaotic, high-stakes coordination of massive cognitive machinery. Frankly, it's a miracle we can do it at all.
And that is exactly what we're digging into today. We've got a great stack of research here, and it's all anchored by this one really comprehensive review.
Right, it's called Cognitive Foundations of Comprehension in Mature Readers by Debra Long and her colleagues.
And mature is the key word there.
It really is.
Because usually when we talk about reading science, we're talking about kids, right? Phonics, A is for apple, all that. But this is different. It's asking what happens after you already know how to read.
It's a fascinating distinction. I mean, we all know people, smart, capable people, who can read the words just fine, but they struggle to connect the dots in, say, a dense report.
Or a complex novel. They get to the end of a page and realize they have absolutely no idea what they just read.
Versus that friend who just seems to inhale a 500-page biography in a weekend and remembers every little detail.
Right. What's the difference?
Exactly. And the researchers in this stack, they basically identify what we can call the big five characteristics that separate those two types of readers. And spoiler, it's not just about being smart.
No, it's a mix of speed, memory, background knowledge, and this one was a real curveball for me, the ability to ignore things.
The suppression, yeah, that's a huge one.
We'll get to it. But let's start at the bottom, the absolute foundation. The researchers call this word-level abilities. Now, to me, this sounds basic. I'm an adult. I know what bureaucracy means. I know what epistemology means. So if I know the definition, haven't I solved that problem?
You'd think so, right? But the research points to something called verbal efficiency theory. A researcher named Perfetti came up with it.
Okay.
And his argument is that just knowing the word isn't enough. It's about the speed and the quality of retrieving that word. It has to be instant and almost effortless.
So it's not a yes or no thing, it's a quality thing.
Think of it like a budget. Your brain has a limited amount of working memory. Think of it as like bandwidth or RAM on your computer.
Got it.
Every millisecond you spend trying to decode a word, even a tiny hesitation over pronunciation or the right meaning, it costs you some of that bandwidth.
And that bill gets paid from the exact same account that handles the thinking part of reading.
Precisely. If you spend, say, 90% of your mental energy just identifying the words on the page, you've only got 10% left for the high-level stuff.
Like understanding the plot or catching the sarcasm or predicting what's going to happen next.
That's it.
You know, it reminds me of learning to drive.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
When you first start, all your focus is on the pedals, the mirrors, the turn signal. You can't even hold the conversation.
Because 100% of your brain is just keeping the car on the road.
Right. But an expert driver can drink coffee and talk about politics because all those mechanics are totally automatic.
And an expert reader decodes words so efficiently that all their bandwidth is free for the complex stuff.
So a poor comprehender, as they call them, isn't necessarily unintelligent. They're just inefficient.
They're resource poor. They're running on empty before they even get to the meaning.
The sources had a study on this that I found genuinely surprising. They looked at these so-called poor comprehenders, adults who struggle with complex text, and if you give them a single sentence, they're perfect.
Right. They get the grammar. They know who did what to whom. If the sentence is, the tall man walked into the room, they get it. No problem.
But the wheels fall off when you just add a second sentence.
It happens at the discourse level. So let's say the next sentence is, he had to stand on a box to reach the shelf.
Okay.
A good reader's brain immediately flags an inconsistency. Wait a minute, why does a tall man need a box? But the poor comprehender often misses that.
Because by the time their brain gets to the word box, they've already had to dump the tall man information just to save bandwidth.
That's the theory. They've understood each individual brick, but they don't have the energy left over to actually build the house. They can't hold that thread.
Which is a perfect transition to the workspace where all this holding is supposed to happen, working memory.
The scratch pad of the brain.
Right. We hear that term all the time. Oh, my working memory is shot today. But for reading, are we just talking about how many numbers you can remember in a row?
Sort of. The classic view is this thing called capacity theory from Justin Carpenter, and they view working memory as like a fuel tank.
A fuel tank. Okay.
If you're a high-span reader, you have a big tank. You can hold the subject of a long, complex sentence in your mind while you wade through 3 different descriptive clauses just to find the verb at the end.
And the low span reader, they run out of gas halfway through that sentence.
Exactly. They crash and burn on what linguists call garden path sentences.
Oh, I love these. Give us the example from this study.
Okay, so listen to the sentence. The defendant, examined by the lawyer, shocked the jury.
The defendant okay, my brain's first instinct is that the defendant is doing the examining. The defendant examined the evidence or something.
Right. You commit to that path, but then you hit by the lawyer, and suddenly your first interpretation is wrong. You have to slam on the brakes, reverse, and reprocess the whole thing.
Oh, the defendant was examined by the lawyer. Okay, I see.
That mental U-turn costs fuel. A high-span reader has enough in the tank to hold both interpretations for a second and pick the right one. A low-span reader just gets lost. They crash.
But, and this is where the science gets kind of optimistic, there's a counterview to this, right? Because that capacity theory makes it sound like you're just born with a certain size bucket.
And if you have a small bucket, well, too bad.
Yeah, tough luck. You're never going to read War and Peace.
That's the biological determinism view. But then Erickson and Kinch came along with the long-term working memory model, or LTWM. And this changes the game.
How so?
They argue that what looks like a big bucket might actually just be a really, really good filing system.
Explain that.
So they looked at experts in other fields, like chess masters or waiters, who can memorize a huge order without writing anything down.
Right.
These people don't have magically bigger brains. What they have are retrieval structures. They've practiced so much they've built mental frameworks.
So they aren't juggling 12 different dinner orders in the air. They're putting them on a shelf in their mind.
A shelf they can access instantly. A skills reader isn't just holding the plot in their fragile short-term memory. They're rapidly weaving it into their long-term memory, encoding it.
So with practice, I'm not making my working memory bigger, but I'm building better shelves.
Exactly. Capacity isn't just fixed. It's a function of skill.
That is a huge relief. But it leads us to the next factor, which I think is my favorite part of this whole deep dive. It flips everything on its head. We usually assume being smart or being a good reader is about remembering things, grabbing information.
But this research suggests it's actually about forgetting.
The suppression ability.
This is Gernsbacher's work. She argues that the real difference isn't just what a good reader keeps in their head, it's how good they are at keeping the garbage out.
The spade experiment. This really crystallized it for me. Walk us through this one.
Okay, so in the experiment, they show people a very simple sentence. Something like, the man dug with a spade.
Simple enough. A spade is a shovel.
Right. But spade is a homograph. It has 2 distinct meanings. It's a garden tool, but it's also a playing card, the ace of spades. So they wanted to see what happens in the brain the exact moment you read that word. They flash the sentence, and then milliseconds later, they test which meanings are active in your mind.
And what do they find?
Immediately after reading, we're talking 100 milliseconds, everyone's brain lights up for both meanings. Good readers, poor readers, it doesn't matter. Your brain instantly grabs garden tool and playing card.
Okay, so for a split second, everyone is technically confused.
For a split second, but here's the key part. They test again at 850 milliseconds, less than a second later.
And
the good readers have killed the playing card, meaning it's gone, suppressed. Their brain has said, context is digging, the card is irrelevant, delete.
wow. And the poor readers.
The playing card meaning is still active. It's still lit up in their brain.
So they're still dragging around this piece of totally irrelevant luggage.
Exactly. And now imagine doing that for every ambiguous word, every slightly off-topic thought, every distraction. Their mental workspace is getting clogged with junk data because they can't suppress the noise.
It's like trying to listen to this deep dive in a crowded coffee shop, and you just can't tune out the conversation happening next to you.
That is interference. And it is a massive predictor of poor comprehension. It's a failure of what psychologists call controlled attention.
This feels so relevant to the modern world, and I want to come back to that. But first, the practical question. We've got speed, memory, suppression. How do we get better at these things? Is it just read more?
Well, yes, but measuring that is actually really tricky. If I ask you, how much do you read? What are you going to say?
I'm gonna lie. I'm gonna say I read The Economist cover to cover, not that I spent 3 hours scrolling social media.
Everybody lies. We
Yeah.
all want to signal that we're well-read. So a researcher named Stanovich came up with a brilliant workaround. It's called the author recognition test.
I've seen this. It's just a long list of names, isn't it?
The checklist. They hand you a sheet with names like Stephen King, Toni Morrison.
Yeah.
But mixed in, they have fake names. Plausible-sounding fakes.
So if I check yes on a name that doesn't exist,
You get penalized. It filters out the people who are just faking it. And it turns out your score on this simple test is a shockingly accurate predictor of your vocabulary size, your spelling, and your verbal speed.
it's a proxy for what they call print exposure.
And the reason print exposure is so important comes down to the data on where we actually learn complex language. There was this amazing study by Hayes and Ahrens that analyzed where rare words live in our world.
And by rare words, we mean the more complex, nuanced words that allow for higher level thinking.
Exactly. And what they found was that if you are just having a conversation with another adult, even a really smart one, or watching primetime TV, the vocabulary is actually pretty simple.
We tend to talk in simple terms.
Like, get this, children's books. Even simple kids' fiction contains 50% more rare words than adult conversation or television.
Wait, children's books, not adult novels.
Children's books.
Yeah.
Because written language, any written language, is fundamentally denser and more complex than spoken language. So if you aren't reading even simple stuff, you are literally starving your brain of the data it needs to build that verbal efficiency we started with.
And that creates the rich get richer cycle you mentioned, the Matthew effect.
It's a classic virtuous cycle. If you read, you encounter rare words. You learn them. That makes reading easier and faster. Because it's easier, it's more fun, so you read more, and on and on.
And the flip side is the vicious cycle.
If decoding is hard, reading is a chore, so you avoid it, which means you don't see the words. Your vocabulary stagnates or even shrinks. Reading gets even harder, and you just fall further and further behind.
That's sobering. But there's one last piece to this puzzle that can sometimes override everything else. We've talked about the brain's mechanics, but not its contents. Background knowledge.
Context. Context is everything.
There's a classic study about baseball that illustrates this perfectly.
The spillage study, yeah. They took baseball experts and novices who didn't really know the rules, and they gave them both a written description of a baseball game.
And no surprise, the experts remembered more.
They remembered more, but it was what they remembered that was so interesting. The experts recalled the goal structure. They understood why the batter bunted to advance the runner. They saw the strategy.
And the novices.
They just remembered isolated facts. The guy ran to a base, the ball was caught. They saw the individual movements, but not the meaning behind them.
And this leads to maybe the weirdest finding in this whole stack, the low coherence paradox.
This is so counterintuitive. I mean, usually would say a good text is a well-written, coherent one, smooth transitions. And for a novice, that's true. They need the text to hold their hand.
But for an expert,
For a high-knowledge reader, a messy text one with gaps where the author skips a few logical steps can actually improve their memory of it.
how is that possible? Why would a worse text be better?
Because it forces the expert to do the work. When they hit that gap in the text, they have to stop, access their own deep background knowledge, and build a bridge to make sense of it. That cognitive effort, that active retrieval, forges a much stronger memory.
So that interference we talked about can actually be a good thing if you have the knowledge to overcome it.
Exactly, and it moves you from just knowing the text to truly recollecting it.
Okay, distinguish those two for me. Familiarity versus recollection.
Familiarity is that vague feeling of, yeah, I think I've seen this before. Recollection is vivid, it's contextual. I remember reading this specific sentence while the character was standing on the bridge in the rain.
And they tested this with Star Trek.
They did. Long and Pratt compared high-knowledge Trekkies to low-knowledge readers. They found that when Trekkies read a new Star Trek story, they weren't just processing words.
No.
They were integrating that new story into this massive, pre-existing mental encyclopedia of the Star Trek universe they already had in their heads.
They were adding a new room to the Enterprise in their mind.
That's a great way to put it. And that active integration created vivid recollection, not just a vague sense of familiarity.
So let's try to bring this all together. We started by saying reading feels easy, but it's really this high wire act.
It's a fragile ecosystem. You need that verbal efficiency, the speedy decoding, so you don't burn up all your bandwidth.
You need a way to manage your working memory workspace, whether that's a big tank or just better shelves.
You need suppression to filter out all the noise and the wrong meanings.
And you need print exposure, just sheer practice to build the background knowledge that lets you fill in the gaps yourself.
And the encouraging thing here is that most of this is malleable. You can't really change your biology, but you can build those retrieval structures. You can build better shelves.
I want to go back to that worry you hinted at earlier, though, the suppression piece.
It's the part that keeps me up at night, honestly.
If the key to deep comprehension is the ability to ignore the irrelevant, to instantly kill that playing card, meaning what happens to us in an environment that is basically designed to interrupt us constantly?
We live in an economy of distraction. Notifications, second screens, hyperlinked text that's always tempting you to click away.
Are we literally training ourselves to be bad suppressors?
That is the fear. If you spend your day practicing distraction, constantly shifting your focus, always letting the interference win, you might be weakening that cognitive muscle. You might be training your brain to keep the playing card active all the time.
And if that muscle atrophies, we don't just become more distracted, we actually become worse readers. We lose the ability to connect the dots in a complex argument.
We lose the deep dive.
That is a provocative thought to leave you with. So here's your mission for today. Go read something challenging, something that requires your full attention, and leave your phone in another room while you do it.
It's the best workout you can do for your brain.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.